You and I are standing on the edge of an ancient shoreline that no longer meets the sea. A limestone quarry in upstate New York where the rock splits like pages and preserves a story in clay. I am your guide today, a science communicator who fell in love with fossils because they carry time with them. At our feet lies a ripple-marked slab from the Silurian, pressed with the outline of a strange creature. It looks like a scorpion redesigned by a boat builder. A broad head shield, two faceted eyes, and a keel-like tail. At the front is a pair of pincers where a mouth ought to be, ready to seize its prey. This is a Eurypterid, often called a sea scorpion, though it was not a true scorpion at all. It was a cousin within the chelicerates, the group that today includes horseshoe crabs, spiders, and scorpions. For more than 200 million years, from the Ordovician to the end of the Permian, they thrived. These animals prowled lagoons, estuaries, shallow seas, and even freshwater rivers across ancient Earth. Some species grew long enough to look you in the chest, with the largest stretching to meters or more. Most were smaller, the size of a dinner plate or a forearm, but scale was not the only marvel. Their design brims with experiments, a body of plates providing armor and a flexible spine. The last pair of limbs flattened into paddles for swimming with bursts of speed. The forward arms sprouted spines for grasping prey with precision. Their eyes, compound and crescent-shaped, surveyed water clouded with silt and teeming with life. On the underside sat flap-like structures likely used for gas exchange book gills shared with horseshoe crabs. They could paddle in bursts, punt along the bottom, or even row like canoeists with oars. Picture an underwater raptor fitted with a boogie board, both agile and armored. The idea of a scorpion of the sea grabs headlines, but the honest picture is richer. They formed a guild of hunters, sweep feeders, and scavengers adapting to changing coastlines. As continents drifted and seas advanced and retreated, they refined their tools for survival. I want you to meet the people who helped me know them through science and craft. Drive Maya Alvarez, a paleontologist who reads rocks like weather charts and patterns. Ben, a quarry worker turned fossil hunter whose back tells the truth about heavy stone. Arya, a wildlife artist who must feel how a joint moves before she can draw it. And Jay, a dive instructor who knows what low visibility feels like in green water. Each wrestled with a piece of the Eurypterid puzzle, turning fossils back into living creatures. Ben found this slab on a day when the saw jammed and work stalled at the quarry. He was clearing debris when a broken edge flashed a faint dark-winged shape. He pried the piece free with a crowbar and saw the delicate outline of a paddle fan. Every segment was shaded in iron minerals, preserved like a frozen moment of movement. He tells me he recognized the rhythm before the name like a hand with too many fingers. Maya arrived with a field jacket and a grin, lifting the slab as if it were a sleeping cat. She explained that the quarry cuts into the birdie group, famous for preserving Eurypterids. These briny shallows, sometimes dried and sometimes flooded, creating unique fossil conditions. The chemistry of those waters could turn a newly shed cuticle into a fossil in days if burial was quick. That is why, though many specimens are molted shells rather than entire bodies, it is a trick of arthropod life that seeds the record with cast-off suits. Arya ran a finger above the slab without touching it, tracing the curve of the swimming leg. She moved toward the spined forelimbs, then the head shield where the eyes sat high and forward. She asked not what, but how. How did it move? How did the water feel along those plates? How did the animal decide to lunge or to wait in the shifting currents? Jay, watching dust hang in the quarry light, spoke from a diver's knowledge of murky water. In such water, you see with your skin and feel pushes and pulls in your body. A broad paddle is not just a propeller, but a stabilizer when silt boils and vision vanishes. The more we talked, the more the outline stopped being a diagram and became an encounter. Fossils tell us more than shapes. They tell us where feet fell and tails dragged. In Scotland and Ontario, trackways show Eurypterids shuffling from pools to channels. They pushed off with paddles, leaving belly drags like commas across the sediment. Some marks, named Palmicnium, match the cadence of legs alternating in pairs. It was a gait built for bursts of movement rather than for long marathons. In their world, salinity swung with tides and storms, testing their adaptability. The champions were generalists that could breathe with book gills in waters from near fresh to near brine. Their prey were jawless fishes, worms, and trilobites unlucky enough to be cornered. Some lineages evolved slicing chelicerae, others sweeping tools for tiny crustaceans. When oxygen rose and coastal food webs thickened, bodies grew in size and power. When ice pins seized back or water soured, they shrank and adapted again. Each environmental shift shaped another experiment in their evolutionary story. As quarry shadows lengthen, we pack the slab and head for the lab. Though the rock will yield questions we can test, steady in the murk of deep time. In the lab the slab rests on foam like a sleeping boat, and we turn light across its surface. Aria sketches by eye, not by tracing, because her goal is to rebuild motion from ancient form. Motion lives in ratios, the sweep of a paddle compared to the width of the body in life. The reach of the spined forelimbs compared to the distance between the eyes speaks of hunting style. Maya measures angles and runs her thumb along the crescent where a compound I once looked sideways. It peered into late Silurian water, gauging currents and shapes through a mosaic of tiny lenses. If you ever held a horseshoe crab, you know the feeling of a helmeted animal sensing by touch. Eurypterids would have known that language even as they invented new verbs for their watery world. To test our ideas, we built them. Years ago I doubted the power of paddles in propulsion, until I took a novice scuba class with Jay and learned how fin twists shape or break vortices. A fossil can turn skepticism into muscle memory when theory meets movement in real water. Ben stands in the doorway, still in his quarry vest, restless because stonework rarely pauses for long. He says he was not a museum person until he saw that each hall might hide a biography. We talk about how bodies write their stories in scratches and scars left in their armor. A pitted spine hints at a fight. A healed crack whispers that a predator once failed to kill. The way a limb bends tells us what the water asked of it in strength and control. We count the swimming leg segments and compare them with modern paddlers from crayfish to horseshoe crabs. Joints line up where thrust meets drag, a pattern repeating across distant cousins when water sets the rules. If you've seen a dragonfly larva jet forward or a ray lift on wings, you've seen physics seal form. With Eurypterids, physics favored quick starts, ambush from below or from behind a concealing ripple. Aria worries about drawing the chelicerae wrong, some curved like shears, others short and powerful like nutcrackers. The literature debates what these mouthparts could pierce. I remind her science tolerates uncertainty like tides. We will compare tool to target, match edge to shell, and map plausibility and function. Meanwhile Maya checks the eyes. Some pterygids show lens spacing hinting at surprisingly good acuity. Vision that sharp costs energy to build and maintain. Animals do not pay for sight they don't use. Good eyes suggest open water chases or precision grabs in shallow surge with equal confidence. Both possibilities teach us they were not blundering monsters, but tuned instruments of their niche. Jay sets a plastic paddle into a tray of water, lifts slowly. The water clings, then peels away. He nods as one fluent in the language of hands. Low visibility teaches subtle differences in strokes. You learn which push throws you sideways and which squares you forward in current. Aria smiles and corrects a line in her drawing, refining proportions to match motion. Ben says he still doesn't like museums, but he loves this room where stone speaks. We test ideas by building them. A student prints a scale paddle on a 3D printer. Jay straps it to a gloved hand. In a dye-seeded tank we watch vortices bloom and detach. Little donuts of energy shed cleanly when the paddle angles like a spoon through the water. Row flat and you waste effort swirling. Feather the blade and you grip, slide, and recover. What we learn from plastic and dye echoes the fossils' design in joints and angles. We also test by reach with a hinged rig mimicking chelicerae, using wax blocks shaped like armor. Narrow blades cut clean but stall under load. Broader tools crush and spall under pressure. Long curved chelicerae favored soft targets or precise strikes at joints in armored prey. Stockier forms likely cracked shells or pinned wriggling creatures in the silt. The fossil record preserves both strategies in the diversity of family designs. Some lean elegant and raptorial, others pragmatic and bulldog in their feeding approach. The truth is likely a mosaic, with juveniles and adults differing, and estuaries mixing prey after storms. We talk about molting. Arthropods grow by shedding, leaving bedding planes littered with ghostly suits. A mass molt may have been cued by moon and tide cycles in ancient shallows. A molt is not death, it's a risky breath between sizes when predators circle and waves threaten. If you've ever outgrown a role or city, you know the thrill and fear of that soft hour. Ben says he left a second job to see more of his kids, taking a pay cut. He learned that growth feels like exposure for a while before it settles into strength. Arya says when she first ruined a museum drawing she wanted to shred her sketchbook in shame. The curator kept the failed page to teach students about spine counts and observational care. Jay says the first panic he saw in a pool wasn't from a non-swimmer, but from a proud man. He hated being seen as a beginner, flinching from vulnerability more than the water. We all laugh, then quiet. In the Silurian, being soft was nightly fact for Eurypterids. They solved it with timing, shelter, and numbers. We solve it with patience and kindness. The fossils give us a script. Jay watches die and says a paddle reads the water and stays level. Maya shows spine 4 limbs and says some hands grab. Some rake in different hunts. Arya draws the eyes and says attention is an organ that shapes survival. Ben touches the slab's edge and says patience is heavy but worth carrying. I say we may never know exactly how a Eurypterid hunted, but we can test likely shapes. Some prefer ambush, others chase, others rake each with strengths written in fossilized parts. There are bite marks on armored Devonian fishes that match shearing tools from predators of that age, and shells with repair scars that tell of escapes from jaws armed with ancient precision. By the time we leave the lab the sun is low and the quarry hums with crickets. I tell you the story of sea scorpions is not a march but a set of braids. They thicken and thin as worlds change over hundreds of millions of years. In the Ordovician they are modest hunters along tidal flats and shallow seas. In the Silurian some lineages become paddle-powered specialists for speed and maneuvering. Others grow, heavier with spikes, armoring themselves against the threats of their time. In the Devonian a new caste arrives in force, jawed fishes with armor and speed. The arms race hardens as predators and prey escalate in tools and tactics. Pterygidids grow huge chelicerae and large eyes, shifting toward speed and precision in hunts. Other Eurypterids tuck into quieter niches in lagoons and rivers, avoiding the main fight. Reefs wax and wane, coastlines breathe in and out with changing sea level. The animal that thrives is the one that handles the swing of these shifts. Later, in the Carboniferous, many groups move inland in a freshwater wave. They follow rivers into coal forests shaded by giant club moss trees. If you imagine a dark river under trees and dragonflies the size of hawks, imagine also a broad-paddled hunter nosing along the bottom for prey. Then begins the long slide toward the Permian as continents collide. Climates sharpen, interiors dry, and brackish havens shrink for aquatic hunters. As habitats vanish, so do the giants, replaced by smaller, edge-dwelling survivors. By the end of the Permian, the last Eurypterids are small and retreating. Other chelicerates, including scorpions on land and horseshoe crabs at sea, inherit the night. The curtain falls in the end Permian crisis with warming and ocean anoxia. Chemical shocks clear entire ecosystems in the most severe mass extinction known. It erases the sea scorpions, a life I love to imagine but cannot meet. The record refuses silence, leaving a ledger of patterns that act as teachers. One pattern says versatility is a shield against sudden environmental shifts. Lineages tolerating salinity swings and shifting diets often endure longer than specialists. Another says specialization wins until the rules change, then it collapses. A third says eyes matter. Attention confers power in murky conditions. I ask my friends what they learned from this work together. Ben says he learned to look down with hope and patience. Work taught him to lift. Fossils taught him to see hidden stories. He used to throw slabs aside until a wet brush revealed a paddle. Arya says drawing is a form of listening to what evidence whispers. Good art about extinct animals is not fantasy, but empathy through evidence. Maya says a quarry is a library if you learn to read it. You must respect its deadlines, as well as its treasures in stone. Jay says fear in low visibility fades when you trust your training. He accepts you will never see everything in the water or in life. I say science is community, each skill becoming a shared hypothesis. The reason to tell you about sea scorpions is not their size. It is to let you practice a way of thinking that works across scales. You start with a trace, build a motion, test it, test again. You hold your conclusion lightly because new rock will arrive tomorrow. In classrooms across the country, students will meet these animals differently than I did. Because Ben donated the slab, Maya logged the data precisely for archives. Arya drew a kit for teachers. Jay filmed a tank experiment with dye. When those students hear sea scorpion, they will not picture a monster. They will imagine a paddler reading water and light with ancient skill. There is a modern echo in living horseshoe crabs with boot gills. They have gentle ancient eyes and come ashore to spawn in certain places. Our lights, seawalls, and calendars may not fit their cycles well. Their blue blood supports medicine. Their eggs feed birds on long migrations. Their presence tells a story about coastal time and shared survival. If you have a beach near you, learn its rhythms in all seasons. If you live inland, learn the geology under your feet in detail. Deep time is not far. It sits in stone steps of your library. It rests in a creek pebble or in the geologic map of your state. From the Ordovician to the Permian and then to you, the message is steady. The world changes, life invents, and the record remembers what lived before. The sea scorpions are gone, but they left us a way to ask better questions of the water we share now and in the future. As we load the truck, Ben writes date and coordinates on the jacket. Arya scans the surface so classrooms can rotate it in 3 dimensions. Jay nods, sealing the moment with the quiet language of understanding.